So I've talked about this a lot here on my channel. I have videos for how to break out of shooting only for free, how to book your clients when you've never booked clients, ways to attract your weddings in that first year of business, and I'll link all of those down below for you today. But in this video, I want to share with you my experience, how I booked my first paid wedding, and really give you, kind of just pull back the curtain a little bit on what I had set up in my business, and just as importantly, some of the things I didn't have set up in my business. Because I think so often this is such an elusive thing to say, okay, I want to book weddings. How do I book weddings? And sometimes I think there is an assumption that you have to have all the gear and all the things in place in your business in order to do this, and you really don't. So I want to share my story and how I booked my first wedding. Okay, so story time. The year was 2013 or 2014, I can't remember, right around there. I had started my business, which meant I had a website, really not good website. I wish I had a screenshot of it. It was nothing amazing. A Facebook page and an Instagram page. And I was posting super frequently to all of these things, mostly with just work that I had photographed in my own home of my own wedding rings and friends that I had convinced to let me photograph them for free. So at this point, I had put out into the world that I wanted to be a photographer, and I was trying to shoot as much as possible. I also had done a little bit of second shooting, really small, really, cheap events. And so I hadn't had a lot of experience with weddings, but I had started to dabble in second shooting at this point. So a friend of mine that knew me from college saw some of the posts that I had put up on Facebook. And the really cool thing about this is the posts that she saw were some of the free shoots that I had done. So if you're in this phase of life right now where you're doing free shoots and you're wondering, is this gonna pay off? Like, is this gonna, amount to anything? I was there, I was working and not really sure where it was going, and it totally paid off for me. This particular shoot led to my first wedding. And so I got an inquiry, I think it was through my website, and this friend of a friend reached out and said, hey, I'm getting married. I'm actually getting married at the university that we went to. What are your prices? And so I had a couple of things in place. I did not have a lot in place in my business, but I had a few things. One of them was a pricing list that I had made, I'm pretty sure in Word, in Microsoft Word. And I exported that as a PDF. And so there was a little pricing structure where I pretty much had replicated it off of my own wedding photographer, like the way that she structured pricing. So it was pretty much just, made up at this point. I think I had a 6, 8, and 10-hour collection. I may have even had an unlimited hours collection. And so I sent this over with an email and a whole lot of excitement and pretending like I knew what I was talking about. And lo and behold, she booked me. She booked my smallest package, and I was equal parts excited and terrified, because then I realized I did not have all the things that I thought you needed, like, off-camera flash, like all the different flashes and triggers and lenses and all the things. And so I pretty much just took all the wedding money from that wedding to hire a really good second shooter to come help me, to buy a second camera body because I knew I needed a backup camera body, and then to rent all the rest of my gear. So I went to that wedding with a rented like 70 to 200, a rented 50mm, a couple of flashes that I rented, and some triggers so that I could have the potential to do some off-camera flash, which I actually did end up using at the reception. And truly, that elevated my picture so much so that it didn't really look like a first wedding, because I was really trying to make sure that those reception images were top-notch. So I don't think I made much money at all, if anything, on that wedding. But I think it's important to note that I didn't have the gear that I wanted, and I didn't have a client management software where I could send them a brochure and get their signatures on contracts like I do now with HoneyBook, which I 1000% recommend, because it's very tedious and time consuming to just go back and forth and say, you have to scan this to me or write me a check and mail it to me and all that kind of stuff. But this was bootstrapping it. I was old school. I took a check from them. I had printed contracts. I had Word document, pricing guides, and yet I was still able to book that wedding. And so I hope that that's encouraging to you to see that, like, you really don't need all the softwares and all the gear and even all the experience. I think the key there was that I was showing up. I was blogging. That's another thing I didn't mention. I was blogging everything I was shooting, all those free shoots, my styled shoots, images that I was taking of my own wedding rings, my own wedding dress, and things like that. I was putting those together into a blog post and just writing to the person, whoever it was that was watching and listening at that point, which was probably like 5 people at the time, and they were all just friends and family. But if I hadn't put myself out there and started with very, very little and said, hey, I want to be a wedding photographer and this is my work, I probably would never have posted or would never have booked a wedding. And I know for sure I wouldn't have, because until you step into the role, no one's going to know that you do this and no one's going to pay you. So that's my story. That's how I booked my very first wedding. I hope that this was fun and different for you guys, just like a little story time. If you have any questions, leave them down below in the comment section and I would be happy to answer them and continue this conversation. But I really want to hear from you. Have you shot your first wedding, and how did you get your first wedding? We talked about this over in my Photo Boss Facebook group once, and it was really fascinating to see how all these different photographers from all around the world got their weddings in different ways through, Craigslist, Thumbtack, friends, family. And it truly just proves that sometimes, there is no right way to break into the wedding industry. At a certain point, you just have to gather up what you have, put it online, and put yourself out there. All right, well, I hope that this video was at least a little interesting, encouraging, and maybe a little entertaining. Thank you so much for watching, and as usual, I will see you guys next week. Bye, guys.